hearing for White Buffalo Quarry, permit M2004-041. This matter is being brought to the board for consideration of permit revocation and for finding financial warranties subject to forfeiture for failure to pay the 2016 annual fee, for failure to submit the 2016 annual report, for failure to submit the 2016 annual map, and for failure to pay the civil penalty of $323 assessed for violation number MV 2016-063. The site is located in Larimer County, approximately 6 miles north of Lyons, Colorado. The chronology is as follows. On January 2, 2015, the division mailed the 2015 annual report first letter to the operator. On January 31, 2015, the division mailed the 2016 annual report first letter to the operator. On January 18, 2016, the division mailed a 30-day grace letter for 2015 and 2016's delinquent annual fees, reports, and annual maps to the operator. On January 2, 2017, the division mailed the 2017 annual report first letter to the operator. On January 10, 2017, the division mailed the notice of violation letter to the operator. And on February 10, 2017, the division received the notice of violation letter mailed to the operator on January 10, 2017, as on the claim labeled before. As of today, the operator has failed to pay the 2016 annual fee, has failed to submit the 2016 annual report and annual map, and has failed to pay the civil penalty of $323. And at this time, it is the staff's recommendation that we, one, revoke permit M2004-041, two, find a financial warranty subject to forfeiture pursuant to CRS 34-32.5-18, parent 1, parent B, parent C, and three, to confirm a cease and desist order from all mining related activities for this permit. Division holds a $13,000 certificate of deposit bond for this site and for this act. Thank you.
But the summary says assisting bonds 28,120.
Actually, no, that's incorrect. The bond's actually $13,000. After that.
You're not recommending a civil penalty associated with this?
There was a civil penalty assessed when we sent the notice of violation letter that they didn't comply to, along with not complying.
What we will do is if we're asking for revocation and finding it subject to forfeiture today, we'll be back in front of the board at a future hearing after we notify the warrantor that we're required to do that by Rule 420. And then at that time, we will ask that confirm the civil penalty if it hasn't been paid at that point.
And the 13,000 is adequate.
That's adequate.
Mr. Chair. And just to explain, this is a construction material site, so the board has authorized us to find a violation at staff level on these and assess the civil penalties. The civil penalties, it was determined, would be an amount equivalent to the annual fee. So it was $323 of annual fees plus $323 of civil penalties. And we're here really for the second step of 3 steps to end up with revocation and forfeiture.
Any more questions?
Move that we revoke permit M 2004-041 and find that the financial warranty is subject to forfeiture pursuant to CRS 3432.5, 118, paren 1, paren B, paren C, and confirm the cease and desist order.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Next item. File M-2009-010.
Mr. Chair, this actually has been moved to the executive session. It should have been.
Okay.
Everyone needs to put on that, so we can use that.
Okay, so we'll move on to file M-2008-076, Robinson Sons Incorporated.
This is Cindy Esler with the division. I have copies of my PowerPoint presentation and my staff presentation form to pass out to you.
Gotta be careful. Environment. I got one for us.
I do want to note that.
Before we forget, everybody who wants to testify in this matter, would you stand? Promise to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thanks. Go ahead.
So I just want to note that Mr. Dan Robinson is here to represent the operator.
Okay. Mr. Robinson, the way we do this is staff will make their presentation, then you'll have your chat. You can ask questions as they go through, and then you'll have your opportunity to testify after they're done.
So this is Amy Esberger representing the division. Can you hear me okay? And this is an enforcement hearing for Robinson Sons Gravel Pit #1, file number M 2008-076, and the permittee is Robinson Sons Inc. The enforcement hearing is for a possible violation, the failure to first obtain from the border office a reclamation permit before engaging in new operation pursuant to CRS 34-32.5-109.1. Specifically, the operator has affected 6.74 acres outside of the approved effective land boundary. Slide 3 shows general site location. The site is located approximately 23 miles west of Trinidad and approximately 1 mile northwest of Weston, Colorado. Slide 5 shows a quick permit summary. This is a 112 construction materials permit. It is permitted for 78 acres to mine sand, gravel, borrow material. And the first mining land use that was approved is for rangeland with potential residential use. This is in Los Angeles County, and the financial warranty held by the division for the site is in the amount of $52,815. Slide 6 shows a brief chronology. On October 27th, 2016, the division did receive a telephone call from Mine Safety and Health Administration. Unpermitted mining activity occurring adjacent to County Road 31.9 in the area of this particular site. On November 23rd, 2016, the division conducted a site inspection and found that the operator had affected 6.74 acres outside the approved affected land boundary. This includes 0.9 acre located at the top of the ridge, which is adjacent to the approved boundary, and 5.84 acres located adjacent to the mine access road. On January 23rd, 2017, the division mailed to the operator the inspection report for the November 23rd, 2016 inspection with a possible violation cited and a reason to believe a violation exists and notice of board hearing letter. Slide 7 shows the approved permit boundary in red. This is the 78 acre boundary. Slide 8 shows the estimated disturbed land. So within the approved boundary is in blue, and it's about a little over 19 acres disturbed on site. The approved disturbed area at any time is 20. And outside of the approved boundary, we have in green the 6.74 acres. So we have these two locations there, one near the county road and one at the top of the ridge near the eastern boundary. Slide 9 shows a close-up of the ridge area. So the blue is within the boundary, the approved boundary, and the green is outside of the boundary. So the very top of that ridge where the extraction is occurring is outside of the approved boundary. Slide 10 shows a close-up of the disturbance, offsite disturbance, close to 30, county road 31.9. So that's your main site access shown there coming in from the county road. And so we have two main extraction areas there, one north of this access road and one south. And the access road itself is not included in the boundary. It is to remain after reclamation. There are several gas well pads in the area that use this road. So it's to remain. The scale house and ramp for the scale house is included in the south area. So that portion is actually used for the operation. You can see it on the south end there. Outlined in green. Slide 11 shows the approved mining plan map. And mainly, I just wanted to point out that the boundary was outlined in green here. And the top of that ridge is not inside the boundary. And the road, the access road, and the areas near the county road are not inside the boundary. And you see the location of several gas well pads, one actually within the site. And slide 12 begins a series of site photos from the November 23rd inspection. So this is looking, we're standing inside the approved boundary looking east. And so it's the top of that ridge there. It's all outlined in green on the previous slide. That's where the offsite disturbance is. These are a few slides from that ridge. Slide 13 shows the top of the ridge. Slide 14, extraction area on top of the ridge. Slide 15, same thing. And slide 16, top of the ridge disturbance. Slide 17 shows at the top of the ridge looking down the haul road that was constructed to access the ridge. So a portion of that haul road is inside the approved boundary, and a portion of it is outside the boundary. So if you look down, you see a excavator there, and that's actually within the approved boundary, just to give you a frame of reference. Slide 18 begins the photos from the disturbance near County Road 31.9. So this is the road that was constructed to go north, to access the north extraction area. So this road comes off of the main access road. And this is looking into that northern extraction area that's located north of the mine access road. Slide 20 shows the same thing. You can see some standing water there. That was concerning to the division. We wrote about it in the report. You received that with the board packet. It's something to be dealt with once we get the amendment. If that's something that the board approves, then we would deal with the water issue with the amended Slide 22, same area, north of the line, site, or line access road, site. Slide 23, same area. Slide 24 is looking at the disturbance south of the line access road. You'll see this area is disturbed probably before the north area, and I think in talking to the operator, that's accurate. You can see some vegetation here starting to grow, so it's a little bit older, but we do have this depression there that was excavated and some water in that depression. So starting with slide 26 is staff recommendations.
Pardon me, Amy.
Yes.
Just a question. So what is the source of the water? Is that retained surface runoff, or have they exposed groundwater in that case, do you think?
The division believes that there is some capture of the adjacent unnamed creek that runs along Wet Canyon. And there was some evidence that the creek has been captured to some extent, but we also believe that some of that is illegal groundwater that's been exposed. So it's kind of a combination of both. And that is something that we'll need to deal with, with the Division of Water Resources to operate, we need to work with them or get back to them. So that's something we would deal with in the application.
I have a question. How did MSHA suspect that they were mining outside their permit area?
Well, Ms. Hannah first contacted the division, and I spoke with her when I was actually in Colorado Springs at the time. I got back, talked to her, and she said they were doing just a normal inspection in the area, and she saw some activity there, some equipment, and she knew that I think she looked up the boundary and saw that it didn't look like it was in the boundary. It seemed to be unpermitted, and so she was concerned and gave us a verbal notification of it. So she just happened to be in the area performing a pre-shot inspection and saw some activity.
So she looked up the boundary on site or online, or do we know?
I think she found the boundary from our laserfish site. Someone in the area, I'm kind of speaking, I don't know how to be honest, but from what she said, 'cause we don't have a.
If you're uncomfortable speculating, you don't
Right,
need
a
to.
little bit of it is speculation, but I believe she talked to someone else in the area for another, because they inspect permanent sites, so they're usually aware of our permit numbers. So up in their laserfish system and see, if that disturbance is permitted or not. And she had some concern that it wasn't. So slide 26, staff recommends that the board find the operator in violation of CRS 34-32.5-109-1 for failure to first obtain a reclamation permit from the board office before engaging in new operation. Staff also recommends a cease and desist order to be issued in accordance with CRS 34-32.5-124, Para 2, prohibiting any further activity on the lands affected outside of the pre-effective land boundary, with the exception of environmental maintenance, reclamation, or corrective actions, until a violation has been resolved to the satisfaction of the division of the board. Staff recommends a corrective action of the operator submitting an amendment to permit number M2008-076 and incorporate all the affected lands into the permit area addressed by the reclamation plan and warranties. The amendment application shall be filed with the division within 90 days of the mailing date of the board's order, with all materials in an approvable form within 180 days of the mailing date of the board's order. Slide 27 is staff recommendations for civil penalty pursuant to CRS 34-32.5-122. An operator who operates without a permit shall be subject to a civil penalty of not less than $1,000 per day, nor more than $5,000 per day for each day the land has been affected, not to exceed 365 days. An operator who mines substantial acreage beyond the approved permit boundary may be found to be operating without a permit. So this would be separate from offside damage. In this case, we have more than 2 acres disturbed, about 6.74 acres. So the staff does consider this to be substantial acreage. In this matter, the board may assess a civil penalty of $31,000 to $155,000 for 31 days of operation, which would be from the date of the RTD letter, January 23rd, 2017, to the date of the hearing today, at $1,000 to $5,000 per day. Additionally, pursuant to CRS 34-32.5-123, Carry Forward, in addition to the civil penalties imposed above, the board shall also assess a civil penalty in an amount not less than the amount necessary to cover costs incurred by the division in investigating the alleged violation. In this case, the board may assess an additional civil penalty in the amount of $566.40, based on 10 hours of staff time at $56.64 per hour. Therefore, division staff recommends the board assess a total civil penalty in the amount of $31,566.40, with all but $5,566.40, which would be $5,000 plus the $566.40 of staff time suspended, if the operator complies with the corrective action by the deadline specified in the board order. And slide 29 is my presentation. Does the board have any questions? You will note there were some additional slides. Those aren't part of the main presentation, unless there are some additional questions. So I didn't want to confuse you, but some additional slides there.
I have a question. In our packet, there was a letter from a neighboring landowner, talking about the fact that some fill material had been placed on their property. And maybe that's outside the purview of this board or DRMS. But I'm just curious where that is, where the disputed area is on the photo.
So I'll show you here. I can show you visually if you like.
Sure.
Maybe a good way to do it.
Yeah.
So here on the south end, I believe the Google Earth images, and there was a close-up image of this included in the inspection report. But there was a stockpile here, and it was within the permit boundary, so it's not outside the CRS. But it did cover up this historic fence line here.
Okay.
I think the extent was about 400 feet. And the division considers this to be a separate matter that can be handled outside the board. Currently, I think we're working toward compliance on this. This is not an off-site disturbance issue. This is a, it actually has become a right of entry issue. When the permit was approved, the operator showed that they had right of entry for that portion of land, but there's been a new survey and a new court decree that shows it might not be owned by, it has to do with the historic fence line dispute. So the division is working with the operator to get this issue resolved.
Thank you.
Can you estimate whether the 52,000 or whatever the bond is adequate to cover this out of the permit disturbance plus what's within inside the permit?
I do not believe the bond is adequate. I have not calculated the bond, but based on experience, I believe it's not adequate. So this will be dealt with the amendment application. We'll do the bond increase to cover the additional effective lands.
Any more questions?
I guess one more question. It looks like the area north of the permit area was mined in an ephemeral drainage. Is that an acceptable practice?
We're talking about the offsite disturbance
Yeah.
here in
Mhm.
the floodplain.
Yeah.
It is not prohibited by the act of law. Historically, the division has approved permits for in-stream money actually in the live channel, not necessarily limited to only floodplain areas. Those are traditionally older permits, not currently
Okay. Okay, Mr. Robinson, your turn. Yes, just come up here and speak into the microphone so that the recorder can record what you have to say.
Well,
Identify yourself.
Dan Robinson, operator. The lower portion, I guess the lower north portion, was a previous landowner's land, and he was having health problems when he was older, so he decided to sell that piece. But before he sold it, he had asked if we could put in a small pond there, so that's where we had first started on that section. And we did a little bit of excavation there for him. And he decided to sell that piece. You know, he had it in the market to sell it because he had health issues. He's from Springfield. So he looked around it and he didn't get any buyers right away. So I said, well, you know, I'll just go ahead and buy that piece from you. And that's what I did. I bought that piece from you. And that's why I wasn't able to permit it, you know, at first, because I didn't know that I first was permitted. And I didn't know that I would do any excavation there further than what he wanted to pond there first. Basically.
When you did that excavation on that property, did you pull material out?
I hope the material actually has the material from. You know, I didn't know it was there at first, but as we started digging into it, it was some decent sand. And that we put into the sand. So I saved the material and stuff.
You have a reaction to the staff's recommendation?
Do I have enough?
A reaction?
Uh,
What do you think about what they're recommending? About getting a new, expanding your permit,
oh,
doing
I-
more bonding and that sort of thing?
I'd be within the ordinance system.
Do you see any issue with complying with the request for an amended permit, getting all of that together and in the timeline that they set forth? Okay.
And you realize that there's a cease and desist, you're not gonna be able to mine until you get that permit approved? Well, that's a good question. Is it just in those areas or is it in the whole pit?
Just the offside areas. The area of the pit's already approved, so we're talking about the area that's been affected outside of what's under our jurisdiction at this point.
But the cease isn't, and desist isn't for that permit number?
Well, I see what you're saying, 'cause it's not under the permit number at this time, but if the board desires to issue that cease and desist, then it would be part of that, I would think.
I guess I'm asking, what's your recommendation?
My recommendation is cease and desist on the outside of that area. And, you know, on the ridge, a portion of it is in the affected area, part of it's out, so you know, that portion, I think it makes sense to just stop everything there on that ridge until we get that part dealt with. But I think when we issue a cease and desist, we're talking about affected lands outside of the approved boundary until we get it permitted. Is typically what we're talking about.
And that's consistent with the board's practice. We usually cease and desist or cease and desist of activity outside of the affected area boundary.
Any more questions? None?
I guess I'm looking at the amount of money that they're requesting. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I think maybe, I don't know, what do you feel about what they're talking about assessing you as a monetary penalty?
That is too excessive. I mean, you know, it is my land, you know, I didn't go outside of my land. That's just, you know, I get our from. that much money. Kind of a kind things kind of slow down there right now. A little slow, but it's what we did a lot of travel for. About 2 years now. So
Do you also understand that, as Ms. Eschberger mentioned, there will probably be a requirement for an additional bond or a bond, an increase in the bond amount? Are you,
I'm comfortable with that. I can understand
Any more questions? Our process is now we close testimony, which means we won't listen to anybody else except ourselves. We discuss what we want to do. There'll be a motion made. We'll make a decision. So you return to your seats. Okay, we've closed testimony. What's your pleasure?
I don't think there's any dispute that there should be a violation for mining outside the permit boundary. It's obvious from the map and testimony that they have gone outside the permit boundary. So as far as finding a violation, cease and desist order, and the corrective action, I don't really see any dispute there, and I would be in favor of finding a violation there.
I agree.
John, I got a sense you may want to discuss the civil
I-
penalty aspect.
I totally agree with what you're saying, but I think I'd like to see us maybe look at something like a $500 fine plus the $566 staff time. If he complies with the time requirements and things with the divisions putting into the equation here.
$500, and I understand where you're coming from. It seems lower than what we have done in the past for mining outside. And we see these come before us often, and these are important violations, and it's important because we need to get these under permits to get them get the reclamation that is required. And so we've tried to send a message in the past that these are not gonna just slide, and they're not just gonna be slaps on the wrist, because they can be, the result of mining outside the permit boundary can be extreme, especially when you look at the water and other aspects here.
I don't disagree, but the staff's already said that they're gonna deal with the water kind of separately on the.
Mhm.
And in Los Animas County, it's just an absolutely, and they're just, the financial situation in Los Animas County is really, really bad. I can understand it. Plus, the operator has shown to me at least that he wants to comply and will do so. And I feel comfortable with that. And that's why I recommend, that particular figure.
well, I guess to some extent I agree that maybe 5,000 is too much, but I don't think 500 is adequate either. And I'm not exactly sure how staff came up with the recommendation to accept all but $5,000 of the fine, but I'm sure there was some logic and some calculus that went into that. But this seems to me to be an especially egregious example of mining outside the permit boundary. I don't see how the operator could not have known that they were outside the permit boundary. And, I've been a little frustrated as a relatively new board member that we see these types of cases in which operators come before us having mined outside the boundaries, and then what we administer is more kind of along the lines of the slap on the wrist. And I think I just think that there should be, in cases like this, there should be a little bit more of a penalty involved. But I'm open to discussing the amount of the penalty, but I think 500 is way too low in my book. And but I'm not sure what everybody else thinks.
I,
I agree with everything that's been said, I guess.
me too. I'm concerned about that. It's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. And the other issue for me is it's not fair to somebody else who's in a permitted operation. And, I empathize with Los Angeles County, no doubt about it. It's tough times. But I think I'd certainly be willing to split the baby at 2,500 and say that's
Yeah.
significant.
I agree.
Somebody want to read a long motion?
Somebody will make the motion, I'll support it.
Mr. Chair, before we just,
Yes.
I just want to clarify. Excuse me. Even over at chest cold. The recommendation is to impose a civil penalty of $31,566.40 with a certain amount suspended. And I'm hearing the conversation with the board members being that the unsuspended portion would be less than the 2,500, but the total amount imposed, as recommended by the division, is the 31,566.40. So if 2,500 is the number the board is happy with, that looks like with the investigatory staff time of $3,066.40. I'm not a math wizard.
That is correct.
That's right. I'll make a motion. I move that we find the operator in violation of CRS 34-32.5-109, parent I, for failure to first obtain a reclamation permit from the board or office before engaging in a new operation. That we issue a cease and desist order in accordance with CRS 34-32.5-124, parent 2, prohibiting any further activity on lands outside the approved affected land boundary, with the exception of environmental maintenance, reclamation, or corrective actions, until the violation has been resolved to the satisfaction of the division of the board. Further, to require the operator to amend permit number M-2008-076 to incorporate all affected lands into the permit addressed by the reclamation plan and the warranties. The amendment application to be filed with the division within 90 days of the mailing date of the board's order, with all materials in an approvable form within 180 days of the mailing date of the board's order. Further, that we assess a civil penalty pursuant to CRS 34-32.5-123, parent 2. That civil penalty be, do I need to? Okay. It's just a civil penalty of $31,000 to $155,000 for 31 days of violation. That we assess a penalty in the amount not less than the amount necessary to cover costs incurred by the division in investigating the violation. So in this, the board proposed that we assess an additional civil penalty of $566.40. So I recommend that the board assess a total civil penalty in the amount of $31,000. Hold it, I need to do the math on that.
It's on there.
Yeah, 560.
Okay. Of $31,566.40 with all but 2,500 plus 566.40 staff time suspended if the operator complies with the corrective action by the deadline specified.
Good job. Second.
Discussion? I want to say for the record that had I read more closely, I wouldn't have asked my question about the land affected outside the permit. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item, file number M-2016-009, Fremont Paving and Ready Mix Incorporated. Would all those who intend to testify please stand? I promise to tell the truth.
Yes.
Okay, what we have is a petition to reconsider the January 18th decision of the board. I think the first action is for the board to decide whether we want to reconsider this petition or not. Right?
Correct.
You mean if we hear testimony where we are reconsidering or we're,
We can decide not to reconsider it, and that's the end. Our decision stands.
okay,
Or we can decide to hear testimony and decide to deny the petition or accept the petition. Go from there.
And under the rule, which is in Rule 2.9 of the Construction Materials Rules, the board can decide on the petition for reconsideration based solely on the written materials, or it can elect to receive oral arguments.
What's your pleasure?
In reading the board packet, it seemed to me that the key issue that would be discussed would be this issue of the permit, the stormwater permit. And I don't know if, I think I understand the issues there, and it seemed to me like staff's response to the opponents made sense. So I don't know if there are other issues to look at, but it seemed to me like there was a technicality about whether the stormwater permit had been issued or was in process, even though a number had been issued as a result of just the application for the permit. And it seemed to me that the understanding is that when an operator or an applicant applies for a stormwater permit, that it's not necessary, it isn't necessarily required that the permit have been issued, but that the permit has been applied for, and that no mining can occur before the issuance of the stormwater permit. If I'm incorrect in that, maybe I'd like to hear someone correct me if I'm wrong, or are there other issues that we need to discuss?
I tend to agree with Randy that I think that the central issue was the stormwater permit, which they're not required to have in order for a permit from the division to be approved. So,
The problem I have with it is under the board order, number 19, under finding the facts, it says the applicant has obtained stormwater discharge permit number COR 341772 from the Water Quality Control Division of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And the point of the petition to reconsider is that that wasn't a fact. And so it seems to me like it wouldn't hurt for us to consider testimony and decide whether it actually being issued or whether that fact is pertinent to our decision or important to our decision, or should we listen to testimony and affirm the fact that that fact's incorrect. The fact is it hasn't been issued, but and go from there. So I guess I'd recommend we go ahead and hear testimony and clear that up, because I am concerned about the way the board order's written.
I agree. I think hearing very limited testimony on the topic raised in the petition and as we discuss it here would be appropriate at this time. Whenever we open it up for testimony, I always get worried that we're going to start rehashing things that have already been decided. But if we reopen it for this very small issue to clear this up and clear up the board order, I think that would be a good idea.
Relatively clear in their petition that that is the issue.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear.
Make sure that we control that,
Yeah.
that you control that, I control that.
You got the gavel, so.
Okay, is that, so are you in agreement to go ahead and hear testimony?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. I think we should listen to the petitioners first. Let them make their case. Go ahead. You're the petitioners. You're the one that want us to reconsider.
No, that's the operator.
They aren't asking for reconsideration, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The objectors were asking.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And I'm not sure the people who are asking for reconsideration are present today.
Oh, okay.
So I'm
All
sorry, I didn't know. Well, maybe somebody just walked in.
Mr. Brubaker, I agree. Richard Branson, attorney for Fremont. That, and we agree factually that we have applied for a permit to discharge. It is not issued. We agree with that. I don't know if we need to take this. That's a fact. We agree.
I think the testimony is what the board's interested in hearing is how relevant is that to our decision?
It's been mentioned, it's not a requirement.
But the board hasn't taken, all I'm saying is the board order said you had a permit. Now we know you don't, and so we need to clear that up as to whether that would affect our decision.
I'm not sure that we misrepresented that fact. I think we said we had applied for it.
It doesn't make any difference whether
Before they got tossed, but
Doesn't make any difference whether you misrepresented it or not. The fact is the board said that you had a permit in our order.
one of the thrusts in their petition was that we had misrepresented. I understand how orders can make it factually correct.
Somebody did just come in, I don't know.
Is there a person here who represents the objectors in this petition to reconsider? No? Okay, well, I guess we'll let the staff explain your position.
This is Wally Evers, Region Division. As we have heard, the fact is that the stormwater permit has not yet been issued. Clearly, the staff testified as such. Misinformed. In fact, the stormwater permit is not required for the board to approve the permit. Under Exhibit M of the application, the applicant is required by the board's rule by the act to list out all the other permits that are necessary for the operation to obtain prior to permitting. Under Exhibit M for this application, there are 5 permits. So including the board's permit, there are 6 permits identified totally. And one of them is the stormwater permit. So if it pleases the board to modify your order so that in fact, it's noted that the stormwater permit is not yet issued. That would be fine, but it would not alter the board's recommendation and decision.
And quick question and clarification. You said the permits that are required before permitting, or did you mean required before operations?
Thank you. Prior to commencement of the mining
Okay.
operation.
Thank you.
None of the other permits listed on Exhibit F are required to be obtained prior to the board's permit.
Thank you.
I think the clarification I'd like to see is just that we acknowledge that a permit's required. The stormwater permit's required.
It is required, like Walt was saying, Exhibit M lists this out. Unfortunately, there must have been some misunderstanding with getting a number. They had indicated that it was approved, and that's what we testified. The concept of using their BMPs as discussed to control sediment and to manage their stormwater will still be followed. If there are changes to that pending stormwater management permit, they're substantial enough. The division may require a TRR permit to discuss what further BMPs will be used, and that's depending on what CDPHE requires.
How do we, if we wanted to clarify the order, how do we, do it? Not the words, but
Absolutely. But before we get to that, are there any more questions for the division or the operator? I think you should close this one. You probably have to.
okay. I have no more questions of the division. Does anybody have any questions of the operator? Okay,
So in response to your question,
we'll
Mr.
close
Chair,
discussion, make a decision.
um,
Close testimony.
governor's office.
I believe we could efficiently effectively take care of the board order with a motion to amend to correct paragraph 19 in accordance with testimony today. Simple as that, and I'll just issue an amended order for your signature.
Okay. Good with that?
Did you follow that?
I'll make a motion.
Yes. I move that we amend paragraph 19 in the board's order to accurately reflect that permit has not been obtained but applied for.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
Do we still need to make a decision, right? Do we still need to make a decision?
Oh, yeah, do we need to deny the petition for reconsideration or?
Yeah.
Okay, then I move that we deny the petition for reconsideration.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item, file number M-2016-040, Cargill Feeders LLC. Pardon me.
All ready to.
Everybody who wants to testify in this, please stand. Promise to tell the truth.
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, once again, it's a request for a declaratory order.
Cattle feeders.
Yeah, tip of the tongue here.
Yeah,
Let me jump in here.
yes,
Okay. This is
explain this.
absolutely just by way of introduction of what we're doing with this case. The board rules allow for requests for declaratory orders to be made to the board. What operators or people can essentially do is ask the board to make a declaration about whether what they're doing would require a reclamation permit, which is what I understand this petition by Cargill to be today. So they're asking you to declare whether what they're doing constitutes mining or not, such that a reclamation permit would be required. And for reference, it is in Rule 2.5. 2.5.3 outlines the factors for you to consider whether a declaratory order should even be contemplated. And in 2.5.4, it outlines your procedure for doing so. Much like the last case, the board can rule on the petition based solely on the facts in the written materials. You could order the applicant to file a supplementary brief. We typically do not do that. We can set this for a substantive hearing on due notice, and I think that if the parties are here, we can get their waiver of further notice and hear them today. Or we can ask them to submit additional facts. If you feel like you don't have all the facts you need to make a ruling on it, you can ask them to submit more materials. That's all I have for now.
So first of all, the decision is to decide whether to have a hearing on this petition for a declaratory order, right?
Correct.
Do you have enough information to say no or yes? Or do you want to have testimony?
I would like to hear testimony.
Me too.
I guess the question I have of the board is that there's if I understand it correctly, there's a significant legal question as to whether by the fact that they already started a permit, whether they can ask for a declaratory order.
I don't think there's a prohibition. I don't think there's a prohibition from them asking for the declaratory order on whether they need to continue that process. I think it may be that they began the permit process on the likelihood that they'll be required to do so. There's not a prohibition. There's no legal issue.
Okay. All right. So we'll begin testimony. Does the petitioner begin?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Deanna Fredrickson. I represent Cargill County in this case.
And before we continue, ma'am, the rules require advance notice of a merits hearing such as this, and we're happy to take your testimony today. But before we do, so we get on the record, you waive further notice.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I represent Cargill cattle feeders in this case, but I'm also a senior land planner for ag professionals. We're a consulting, full service agricultural consulting firm located in Greenwood, Colorado. And so I speak for Cargill, but I also speak for the agricultural industry, if you don't mind. So I have a prepared speech that I'll try to make it as conversational as I can. I'm a little intimidated by this forum, but I feel strongly about this, and so thank you for allowing me to express our position on this. I represent Joel Lemons, who is the general manager for Cargill Cattle Feeders in Lake County. He was unable to make today's meeting, but we felt it was important to address the board at this time. I'm going to try to continue it again, and I believe I can answer any questions on his behalf concerning this matter. They're currently extracting construction materials and other soils from property that they own to repair and maintain their own roads in their feed yard. The materials are being extracted from a grassland site that is approximately 10 acres in size, and they transport it to their feed yard approximately 3 miles away. This practice had been going on when Mr. Lemons became general manager last year, and I give him a lot of kudos for this because for the first time that I've seen in a very long time, he's someone that's asking for permission rather than forgiveness. So he became the general manager, and there were no violations pending. But in the spirit of compliance, Mr. Lemons asked the question: are land use permits required for this operation? He asked the question to both Yuma County and to the state, and both entities said yes. Mr. Lemons submitted required documentations to Yuma County, who held a public hearing and approved the land use activity with stipulations. essentially approved the land use and the use of their roads for this operation. The stipulations included reclamation of the site once the site reached the end of its life, setback requirements, and that materials be used solely by the applicant and could not be resold, and it must comply with all federal, state, and local regulations. The approved resolution included a reference to the 110C permit, which was assumed would be the appropriate process at the state level. The document included a condition that required only approval by the state of Colorado Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety. It was assumed at that time that the approval of a 110C application would conclude this land use act. However, Mr. Lemons wondered if this were truly a mining operation. Mr. Lemons submitted an inquiry using the DRMS process, is it mining? A response was issued dated July 24, 2016. In this response, the statement was made, the proposed operation appears to satisfy the conditions of the agricultural exemption with the sole exception of off-site transport using county roads. The letter further stated, if you disagree with the division's determination, you may petition the board for a declaratory order whereby you may obtain an exemption from the permit requirements, which is why we're here today. Mr. Lemon submitted a 110C permit application initially. After the initial review, there were enough deficiencies in the application materials that Mr. Lemons sought the assistance of a professional consultant to complete the task. He also requested an extension for resubmittal, waiving his right to a decision by December 9, 2016. It was at this time that Mr. Lemons contracted with ag professionals to complete the 110C permit application materials. After reviewing all of the correspondences that Mr. Lemons gave us, AgPro recommended that Mr. Lemons exhaust the opportunity to request a declaratory order before submitting a response to the 110C permit adequacy review. AgPro, given our professional standing in the agricultural industry, agricultural community throughout Colorado, believes it's in the best interest of Cargill to be granted a declaratory order. Simply stated, the process for maintaining the feed yards is in keeping with the ongoing and routine operations of the facility and most facilities in Colorado, which is regulated through the county and potentially other state regulatory agencies. There's no benefit on being further regulated by the state mining board. It is unusual for this type of routine activity to be subject to the provisions of the state reclamation plan. And I hope I haven't given anything away on behalf of our other clients who are also doing this. We're speaking on behalf of the whole industry as well, but we don't want to subject any of our clients to unnecessary regulation. We understand regulation is important and needed, but we don't want to subject the rest of our agricultural clients to the same regulations, which is why we're here today. So this is why we're petitioning the board for a declaratory order. We received a response to our petition just one day prior to the hearing last month. That didn't give us enough time with the board's legal counsel. That didn't give us enough time to really feed it through, which is why we asked for a continuance from last month. I'm not an attorney, and I speak as though I'm not an attorney, but I had some real questions about the brief that was submitted to us from your attorney. And so I had an opportunity to discuss this with an attorney, but I speak in my own words, if you don't mind. So first of all, the applicant's, the attorney's comment said the applicant failed to appeal to the is it mining response. There doesn't appear to be a formal result in the is it mining. And we don't feel like we failed to do anything. The letter of request for a declaratory order was received as a suggestion, and then that's why we're following through at this point. We don't believe the issue was moot. In this case, the MLRB order would result in withdrawal of the 110 application that we've already started. We know we had to pay an application fee, and we would look for a refund of that. We know some time has been expended in order to review that. We're not asking for that. But if we get a declaratory order today, then we'll be able to withdraw that application. The adequacy process speaks to the appropriateness of treating agricultural operations as if they were commercial mining. There's an active controversy, so we don't feel like this is moot or not right, given the division's request to stop this activity. There's a great practical significance to Cargill's ability to manage its agricultural operations on a daily basis. Also, is there an agricultural exemption? Mr. Erickson, in his "Is it mining" response, alluded to the conditions of an agricultural exemption. However, I couldn't find any agricultural exemption in my research of the code, and so I wanted clarification on that. It's unclear if an agricultural exemption exists associated with this permit process. And then finally, agricultural borrow happens routinely, like I said. The Erickson letter acknowledges that not all earth moving activity involved in the production of construction materials, and that is specifically the case with Cargill's proposal. Borrow happens all the time in construction activities, and it's not necessarily a mining operation. Cargill does not agree that this is mining. The land use and the use of public roadway has already been approved by Yuma County through their land use process, and it will be regulated by Yuma County. We appreciate your consideration of our position in this matter and ask that you approve our request for a declaratory order to allow the extraction operation for maintenance of Cargill facilities to continue. Thank you. Can I answer any questions?
I guess I'd like to hear a little more about how this is a problem for other cattle feeders.
Well, these kinds of operations, Cargill owns a lot of property, as do a lot of our cattle feeders and our feedlots and our dairies. And they routinely take borrow from their own properties in order to build up their feed yards and repair their roads. And so we feel like this is an ongoing maintenance operation that happens all over Colorado. And just because this particular applicant or this particular client decided to ask the question, they're suddenly being asked to do a mining reclamation permit. And we're not sure that that's appropriate in this case. We're not sure it's appropriate in any case with our feedlots and dairies.
So I think specifically the staff's position was you come under the law because you were transporting on a public road.
That's correct.
And you're saying that's normal practice within your industry.
It is. And we routinely work with the counties at the county level in order to do maintenance agreements with the counties to make sure their roadways are maintained and to make sure we have permission to use the county roadways. And in this case, we do.
I'm talking about taking borrow from property that's not contiguous to the feedlot and bringing it over county roads. They're doing that all over the state.
They do that on occasion, not routine. I'm not going to say routinely, but they do that on occasion. Most of our feed yards and our dairies, the bigger ones, use county roads to get between one part of their property to another part of their property.
Yeah, I might add, Yuma County is one of the top 10 agricultural counties in the country, so they probably look at things a little differently in Yuma County than some other counties. Just, this is a point of knowing, the commissioners and stuff in Yuma County so that they do the best they can to look out after their major industry, which is agriculture.
I guess one of the questions I have, and I would also like staff's input on this, is that what you're saying is that just because the borrow material is going to be used more or less in-house, it's all part of the same operation, it's not going to be sold for anything, that there's a distinction made there that there should be an exemption. But most of the construction materials permits that I think we have, especially on the Eastern Plains, occur on agricultural lands, and those are all required to have a permit. So, and the reclamation, the post-mining reclamation plan usually calls for the land to be returned to agricultural use, either as rangeland or wildlife habitat or something like that. So what in your mind is the distinction between, and in reading the packet material, it seemed to me like this is going to be a kind of a large pit. I read in one instance up to 60 feet deep, and then another instance 25 feet deep. And I don't know if that's consistent with what you're saying is occurring with other agricultural operations. But that to me appears to be mining, because you're creating a fairly large pit that's going to require reclamation, and it's construction material. And so I'm just wondering how, in your mind, is it different from mining?
I think that the response that we got said it was very specific that the only reason it would be considered mining is because of the use of public roads, or in this case, county roads. And we feel that just because the extraction location is 3 miles away from where the actual feedlot is, why would that be mining? And we understand that the pit, and my understanding is that it was 25 feet deep, which is significant. But it's in his best interest, as well as the county's best interest, to make sure that's reclaimed and brought back into grasslands and rangelands when they're done. What they don't want to do is have to confine this operation to one area if they don't have to. They know they have setbacks. They know they have to stay in compliance with county codes and county recommendations. But they don't want to have to report, I think, to 2 different entities or more in order to continue their operation of shoring up their feed yard. That's the position that we're taking. I agree with you. It's fairly, it seems fairly extreme to have a pit that's 25 feet deep. In terms of the number of trips that are made with their trucks, it's not significant. So it'd be less deep if they went wider and farther out, but it doesn't make sense with their pivot and their operations that they have going there. And so we really don't feel like we wanted to push back a little bit if we could on this. And certainly Cargill and Mr. Lemons will be ready to proceed with the 110C permit, but we really wanted to exhaust this first to make sure this is really needed, because the reclamation will occur at some point. We know the groundwater isn't any closer at that location. I mean, based on the geological reports that we have, it's 80 feet deep or more, and so we know they're not going to hit groundwater, and so it's in their best interest to make sure it's replenished. So there's no harm.
Well, we have in the past looked at operations in which state highway department contracts are being fulfilled by the use of borrow material from adjacent properties, and those require a permit. And yet there's no exchange. I mean, it's all sort of in-house. It's all part of the contract to do the construction project on a state highway system, for example, or county road. The use of borrow materials, and in a lot of cases, are not even, the pits that are created are not even that significant, and yet they're required to have a permit. So, I mean, to me, the fact that the material is being transported on county roads is irrelevant. This looks and sounds to me like a mine. And so I'm not sure if there's much of an argument to be made as to why it's not mining, because it's construction material being excavated, just like many of the construction materials operations that we deal with. So I'm having a hard time finding the rationale for exempting this type of operation, just based on the fact that it's agriculture.
Is there an agricultural exemption?
Not that I know.
It keeps being referred to, and that's why I'm confused by that.
May I respond? Ms. Wally Erickson with the division, and as the author of the letter and the author of that statement, I'd like to respond. In the past, there has been an exemption based upon agricultural use. So if a landowner was excavating material from his own land for use on his own land to support agricultural activity, there was an exemption from land reclamation requirements. However, that exemption no longer exists. It has been rescinded. Staff continue to honor that as long as there is, the excavation area is located on the same parcel on which it's used. But if it crosses property boundaries, especially used in public road, public infrastructure, then we say no. We cannot abide by that as mining. Clearly, it is mining. They're excavating construction materials from a native natural location, and they're transporting them off-site. Clearly, it is mining, and it is subject to reclamation permit requirements, especially because you are transporting costs. So, Mr. Lemons and I had quite a series of discussions regarding the agricultural exemption, and I put that clarification in my written response back to him, just to clarify with him that that was my reading at that time on that day, that he did not qualify for the rescinded agricultural exemption simply because he was transporting it off-site.
When you say rescinded, how did that occur? Was that an internal decision? Was that published somewhere? How was that rescinded?
I believe at one time it was moving, and perhaps when the rules were revised, we did make it a provision.
Well, if I can add to that,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
I'm a little confused here, but let me have the petitioner complete her presentation.
Okay.
Where she's comfortable that she's been able to say everything she
I-
wanted to say. Then we'll let the staff make your case.
Okay, I'll respond to that when we have our opportunity.
My presentation is complete, and I know that I can work with Mr. Erickson on other, other clients that may come to us for the same reason. Is it because it's 25 feet? Is it because of the volume? I still need to clarify that for myself so that I can advise our clients. But I wanted to take this opportunity to address the board on behalf of the agricultural industry and Mr. President. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you.
Go ahead, staff, make your presentation.
This is Wally Erickson with the division. Tony, could you introduce one now?
Yes, thanks, Wally. So I believe it may have been in rule at one time in an earlier iteration of the rules, but there was a policy that the board had about what certain activities that would be exempt from the need for a reclamation permit. And that policy was rescinded, I want to say October 2010 timeframe. And that policy described a few activities that we no longer exempt from the need for a permit. One of those was what was commonly referred to as rock farming, which is picking up rock from the surface, just sandstone, usually decorative rock. That was exempted. If they were only using rubber-tired equipment, well, that we found through various investigations and inspections that there's a lot more disturbance that's occurring there than the benign, picking up a few rocks off the surface. It was a big commercial activity going on. So that requires a permit. I think there was the agricultural exemption, and as Wally stated it correctly, material from one's own property used on one's own property. This was determined to be a contiguous parcel of property, and there were many iterations came before the board just to, and Wally, maybe you're going to get into this a little bit, but we have this is it mining questionnaire or need for a reclamation permit questionnaire. It asks a series of questions for us to determine if certain activities would require a permit or not. And that's what Wally was responding to. So they filled out the questionnaire and then we responded. Now, a basement excavation is removing material from its natural occurrence on the landscape. Obviously, we don't require permits for that activity. Sometimes in agricultural situations, they're digging ponds to run sprinklers. We often don't require permits for those activities, but that's a little dependent on if the material is going to be staying on site or if they intend to sell it as a commercial product. So that would be kind of a determining factor there. So we get a lot of questionnaires about this, and we make that determination. And in that determination, we say, this is what we think. You require a permit, you don't require a permit. In both instances, we indicate that if you don't, if you want to investigate this further, you're free to request a declaratory order from the board to make it completely clear. So that's kind of the history of what's been going on. That policy is rescinded. This is obviously excavating material from its natural occurrence. It is being used as construction material. It is being transported off-site. And further, under 109.3, parent 3 of the Act, no governmental office of the state other than the board nor any political subdivision of the state shall have the authority to issue a reclamation permit pursuant to this article. So the county cannot issue reclamation permits. They can require, we have that tension with counties all the time. They can't require reclamation standards different than those established in this article or require any performance or financial warranties. So we are the authority throughout the state to require mining reclamation permits. And we work with counties. When somebody comes in for an application, we notify the county. Prior to submitting the application, the applicant has to notify the county. So we work closely with the counties. It isn't always reciprocated, but we definitely reach out to them when that occurs. So just a couple of points before Wally talks about this particular case. Thanks.
So, as I've testified before, clearly this operation is excavating construction materials from the state of national location, transporting those materials off-site to another location. That certainly satisfies the definition of mining as a mining operation. And under the statute, all mining operations need a reclamation permit. Reclamation is required for all affected mines. We don't have a reclamation permit for this particular operation. That is taxation based on it. As Tony's pointed out, we are the only authority, we were the only authority that require reclamation bonds. We applaud Mr. Lemons and the fact that he's already working with the county and the county has a special use permit for the road. Sometimes that is a concern, is that the operator may be using public roads and the county road which are not getting their road impact. In this case, apparently, that's not occurring. However, that's not necessarily the case for the state. So consistency is important that we break the consistency regardless of how the county may be formed or how closely they're operating. We also have the issue of by virtue of using public roads for transport, engaging in commerce, there is an opportunity for competition for the operator. They are in fact acting as a mining operation, but they don't have a permit. Therefore, they have a very permit operators who are also doing the same activity. They're excavating material and transporting it outside.
So my question goes to consistency, and Is the standard now that if you're going to use it on lands that you own, that if you somehow use county roads or public roads, that puts you into the position of needing a reclamation permit? Is that the policy that we're talking about here, or?
The previous exemption for agricultural is no longer in effect.
Mhm.
Staff has continued to temporarily honor the concept as long as material is not being transported off site. As long as it's remaining there. And as Tony indicated, there are certain activities that are already permitted in other agencies. We don't get involved.
Yeah.
But if this is not necessarily division's official policy, it's just something that's happening. In the past, the board has made statements about off-site transport.
Yeah.
But that was a long time ago, different board.
I mean, I, in the last 4 years, distinctly remember having conversations when we have these types of issues come up, saying, someone saying, I don't remember if it was the board or staff saying, it's never been our intention to have a rancher who needs to repair his roads, that if he goes on his own land and gets road material from his own land and repairs his roads, it hasn't been the intention that that person would then need a reclamation permit. Am I okay. So that's just because they don't then go on public roads. I'm trying to understand. So, my job is to help people understand what the rules are and how to comply with them. So I'm trying to understand what the rules are here and how we apply them, but it doesn't necessarily sound like there is a set standard as far as when that occurs, and it's somewhat the discretion of the staff. Is that true?
That was what I was attempting to clarify, Mr. Lindsay.
Okay.
The statement that, you appear to qualify for that agricultural exemption, except transported off-site.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I might just add to that. So one of the reasons that the policy was rescinded is because it had grown to exempt so many activities. And one of the points that was made during that rescission was that commercial activities step up to the point or beyond what the small farmer might be doing, or a rancher just getting some gravel out of the creek and taking it to his yard and, filling in some potholes and things.
Yeah.
So that commercial line was drawn at that point. It's because what we were running into is a lot of oil and gas activities where they're digging enormous pits to build a lot of roads, kind of like what you saw in the previous item that he found a violation in. That's what those guys he had that pit and they were building a lot of roads. Well, people owned land. They were digging great big pits to build a lot of roads. So the commercial thing came into play. There really isn't a hard and fast line, but what we do is at the staff level, at the direction of the board, we can have a discussion about this if you'd like, as we make that first cut. There are a lot of things that we determine do not require a mining permit. For instance, the irrigation pond that's constructed and material isn't hauled off site, that doesn't require a permit. It's nice when people come and ask us the question ahead of time. That's really good to have that permission versus forgiveness thing. And in this instance, actually, they have begun excavating, and we're working with the operator here to allow them to get a permit instead of writing a violation. That's another point that needs to be brought forth. But I think Board Member Fisher, if it looks like a duck and sounds like a duck, it's a duck, and this one certainly meets all the criteria. So.
First of all, that us being responsible for maintenance of county roads and the fact that they don't charge impact fees is immaterial in my opinion. I don't think it justifies us doing something because Yuma County doesn't have impact road fees. The main deciding issue for me on the board on whether it's mining or not has been in the past, is anybody making money off of it outside of their own company. We had a rancher down in gas country in Los Animas County who was digging out stuff for roads on his ranch, and we agreed that wasn't mining. We were taking material from one place and putting it on another. So that also the commercial aspect of it is easy for me to define, because then the competition aspect gets into it. If you're taking it from your property and using it someplace else, you have an economic advantage, but you're not getting any cash money for it. You're not actually getting revenue for it. We've had builders in the past who took stockpile of material up in Evergreen and moved it onto their construction site. He said, well, I didn't pay for it. Well, that's true, but he moved it. So the definition hasn't been as clear for me on the definition of whether they were making money or not was clear to me. The specific definition of using public roads has not been clear to me, that was the tipping point on having to get a permit.
Clearly, if anyone was making money on it, yes, that would be under.
It is a mining question here, a series of 18 questions. Each one of those, depending on the response, could trigger needing a reclamation permit.
I understand that, but in this case, the only one that triggered it was the fact that they said they were hauling it 3 miles, right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So off-site is defined as somebody else's property.
Yes, sir.
Anytime you're moving material from one place to another over somebody else's property, it's fine.
Yes, sir.
The other thing is, in this specific case, I'm really confused as to whether this is 30 feet deep, 60 feet deep, 3.5 acres, 35,000 tons a year, 19,000 tons a year. I don't know which is which will obviously, if they have to get a permit, that's going to get cleaned up.
Elliot Russell, sitting here with me, is the specialist who is reviewing the 110 construction materials application. He can best address what the application material is. According to their response to my visit mining questionnaire, when they responded regarding the board visit mining questionnaire, they represented the operation, characterized the operation one way, which is very different from the way it's characterized in the permit application.
As well as how the operations is discussed in their petition. There's a lot of different competing things, and the 110C permit application has quite a few deficiencies, so a lot of that information has not been determined, but what we did provide was there's an existing disturbance there. It's approximately the size of the permit boundary, so 9.97 acres. And there, in approved mining plan, the state 25. I believe there was contradictory information about 60 feet deep in the questionnaire versus a different value.
And then in your legal analysis, in addition, Cargill's petition for declaratory order is no longer ripe due to Continental's commencement of mining. And C, failure by Cargill to appeal the division's final determination made on July 24th. So what you're saying is they can't now say they don't come under the law because they didn't do it when they made their application.
Well, under Rule 1.4.11, Board's rule talks about timeframes for appeal of the staff decision. And so, under the rule, they have 30 days to appeal
Your letter.
my letter. And that timeframe is passed, so it's simply a rule issue as far as whether or not it's timely.
Talking about how commencement of mining has already started, I believe there's a policy about declaratory orders. If someone comes to the board with a proposed operation for declaratory order, I believe there was a greater chance of getting it if it hadn't yet started. I believe that's why.
Say that again.
Yeah, I'll clarify. To commence the excavation activity and then come and ask for a declaratory order, the timing process is off. The appropriate process would be to ask permission prior to commencing the excavation through the declaratory process. In this case, they responded to our mining questionnaire, we said your mining need a permit. The mining activity has been going on, and now they're asking for a declaratory order when they are in fact excavating material.
Gotcha.
And like what Tony was talking about, how traditionally we may pursue enforcement, but since there's an ease of mining questionnaire and they submit an application, we're working with the permits and years to get compliance rather than the issue enforcement.
Right.
The permit fees and annual reports and so forth, annual fee. Can you elaborate a little bit on those fees for a 110 permit?
Yes, so the application fee, I believe it is $1,215 for a permit application, and the annual fees are $323 a year, along with the report.
And have you looked yet at what a bond amount might be for an operation like this?
This bond may be a little bit higher than our normal range of $2,500 to $3,500 per acre of disturbance because topsoil has not been salvaged at the site. So the bond would initially be calculated to importing topsoil requirements. Like I said, about a little more than or a little less than 10 acres has been disturbed there, so that is a significant chunk, a significant portion of the bond. I would estimate $3,500 per acre, so $3,500.
On a 110C, can they sell?
What's that?
If they get a 110C, can they sell material?
Yes.
Any more questions of the staff? Petitioner, do you have anything else to say in summary?
It may be that I'm not clear enough on all the codes and regulations, so I apologize for that. But whether the pit is 25 feet, 50 feet, or 60 feet, I obviously got different stories too. One is not his fault, I'm sure, but what we had reported is 25 feet deep. Does it matter at this point? It doesn't make a difference. And so the fact that there's inconsistencies doesn't change the opinion. And then,
But I can only speak for myself, but I
that's
think
what I'm asking.
what the staff's saying is if you take a yard of material from here, hauling it on the road and putting it someplace else, it's mining. It doesn't make any difference if it's 2 yards or 200,000
So
yards.
if we have a farmer.
I shouldn't say 2 yards, but I mean,
That does the same kinds of things in order to build up their road with their feed yards. Are we required then, do we need to recommend to our clients that they come for a reclamation permit? for that?
when you say their roads, I think that's the significant issue. Are they,
So if we need a road to get through the feed yard and stuff, it's not a public roadway, but they need to be able to drive trucks.
what we've said is off-site is the key. Are you taking it from, even though you own both pieces, Are you taking it off of a piece you own over a public transference to another piece that it's going to be
And
defined
even
as
if it's
private?
1 yard or 2 yards or 10 yards.
I was ridiculous, I'm sorry. There isn't,
So there needs to be a threshold. I'm sure is there a threshold in the regulations there?
not that I know of.
Actually, there's not a de minimis threshold. However, that's why we developed the need for a reclamation permit questionnaire, so we could ferret out these questions. So I think the best thing to do would be to ask the question, ask permission up front, or seek a declaratory order. You don't have to go for the need for a reclamation permit right away. You can come to the board and seek a declaratory order right away. But that's just a little better process probably, so we can think about it. We've got a lot of experience, and we probably get 10 to 20 of these a year, I would say, questionnaires. And
we
so,
have full confidence that you're treating everybody. So it's not a question. I'm just trying to be clear so that I can communicate to our clients and to our constituency what the outcome of this is, because they're all wondering. And so, obviously, it's been going on for a while. We didn't know we needed a permit. And bless his heart for asking, but we're really wondering if some of our other clients should be doing the same thing. So that's why I'm very concerned about the decision today.
As we've stated, we've had cases where ranches in southeast Colorado, where they've, within the ranch, moved material around, somebody complained about it, and that they didn't come and talk to us first, but somebody complained about it, and we determined it wasn't mine, because it was within the ranch. I don't know how else to say it.
I think there are a
The key
lot of,
here is off, the word I keep hearing today that's clarified in my mind is offsite.
It's still property now, but it's just using county roads or transport.
That's,
And so
that defines offsite.
I think it's the combination of factors. It's how big it is, it's a significant disturbance, needs to be reclaimed, it's being hauled off site. So there's a number of factors that go into it. It could be other factors on other sites. For instance, people often want to create a trout pond somewhere, and they find out there's beautiful gravel under there, and they just want to haul it off site and maybe make a couple bucks on it. And they're not mining. They're making a trout pond, but obviously they are mining, because so there's just, it can be, there are any number of different instances. And so that it just, that's why we have this process. Thanks.
And then the other thing that we routinely do reclamation plans for county permitting. They're not permitting reclamation, nor are they taking a bond for reclamation, which is the difference between a permit here versus here. But we do write reclamation plans for the counties that are considered and received and approved. And so that's the distinction there.
I don't,
Also, permits required of the county to do like land. So that might be an instance where you writing. And that clearly is just the cut and fill piece of property. So that is something that we would consider. It's sort of, we would say,
I'm sorry, did you say we would consider that money?
we have a lot overgrading plan. And just a cut of piece of property, just level it out, put sprinkler on it. I think there's a lot of.
But you said that wouldn't be money.
That's correct.
I couldn't hear
Same.
whether you said would or wouldn't.
Correct. That would not.
well, I don't know if it'd be appropriate to respond to your, Ms. Frederickson's question or not, but maybe during deliberations, but I think it does matter how deep the pit is. We've had applicants come in or operators come in before and say, now that, they've created a high wall that requires under reclamation a 3-to-1 slope after mining is completed. And yet they've mined all the way up to an irrigation ditch. They've mined outside the permit boundary, for example. There's no way without moving the irrigation ditch, that they can create a 3-to-1 slope without bringing fill material back in at huge expense to the operator. And so we see these types of problems where the depth of the pit actually does make a big difference, because you're under normal reclamation, you have to bring those slopes back down to a 3-to-1 slope to prevent erosion and safety hazards and things like that. So I do think it does make a difference how deep they are, frankly.
Any more questions? Okay, we'll close testimony. Get discussion.
I guess in my mind, this comes down to a pretty narrow technical argument. And the argument is whether going across a public road triggers a permit application. And apparently that's been a long-standing policy. At the beginning of the discussion, I was kind of on the fence on this one, but I think the scale of the operation has kind of swayed me the other way. The fact that topsoil was not salvaged, I think, means maybe there is a need for a permit there. So I think in this case, it probably should require a permit. I think, though, that the policy maybe is something that I don't know if it needs to be firmed up somewhat but maybe a discussion for a later time, possibly.
I think in the letter from ag professionals, one of the bullet points was that there's no statutory purpose served by requiring a reclamation permit, and I really disagree with that. I think a lot of operators could make that same claim if they, that what we're doing is not, there's no beneficial purpose for what we do here. But I worry about setting a precedent by if we were to exempt this operation and agree to the declaratory order without some really tight guardrails put around what we're doing. It seems to me like the testimony would indicate that this declaratory order would be used as precedent for other operations around the state, and some of those may be the types of operations that clearly it's not mining. What they're doing is just routine kind of maintenance around their farms and so forth. But I worry about issuing an order without some really significant guardrails and guidelines. And I think I'm pretty comfortable by not issuing, not agreeing to the declaratory order in this case.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all, but I still think as an agency, we need to keep in mind that, especially in the agricultural industry, this particular endeavor, and I totally agree with the separation of where the land is, but part of the operation and part of what you pay taxes on and part of your property is the ability to go ahead and keep your farming operation, your agriculture operation going. And so I think we need to continue. And I think you guys were looking at that to look at those examples as they come by so that, it's unfair to me being a property owner that I can't use my own property to help my own business. And so I think we need to be real careful about that as we proceed forward. But this particular case, I think, the guys started and we are hauling it over, county lands and everything. I just throw that out there to just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at agriculture and just property owners. We keep kind of taking away property rights, and I'm a pretty liberal guy. It's sort of I just think we need to be cognizant of that. There should be an appreciation of the ownership and what that business is means to those people. And, this is a Cargill thing, but I think, what about the little guy too, that's a farmer and needs to repair his roads and I'll shut up, but I just hope you keep that in mind.
I agree with what John is saying, as far as Cargill and where they got for this one and the offsite portion of this that kind of puts it into the mining phase for me. And thinking about going forward and the policy, the internal policy that the division has the experience and the understanding with the rules to apply them, and I trust them that they do it consistently. I think maybe for clarification purposes, we should bring up the potential of maybe getting some of that in writing into a policy format that's available to the public, just so they can understand it a little bit, but we can talk about that as a separate issue. As far as the matter that's before us, like Forrest, I started out a little bit on the fence, but hearing the testimony of staff, I feel in this case that we should deny the request for a declaratory order.
Okay, thank you. I too started out saying we ought to grant the declaratory order because I guess in my experience, I've never run into this off-site definition of getting on a public road. But listening to testimony today, I think it makes sense. I think now I have two key issues when I'm looking at something like this. One is somebody making money off of it. Now, two, is it being hauled off-site? So I too am in favor of denying the declaratory order. We need a motion, don't we?
You do.
I move that we deny the petition for a declaratory order.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Okay, we'll go ahead and take, next issue is file number M-1984-049, declaratory order and reconsideration of a board decision, Pride of the West LLC. Will all those who intend to testify please stand? Promise to tell the truth? Thanks.
Before we get rolling, I have a question for the board members. Does your version of the packet include the petition for declaratory order and reconsideration? Mine doesn't, but I see multiple versions before the board.
Mine does. This?
No, not the complaint, the actual petition filed by Pride of the West. You guys have that in your materials? We can get it. I just want to be sure. I know I think we had it at January, and then we continued it. I don't know if it made it into the packet this month. It's in the form of a letter, by the way, from the law offices of John R. Henderson, PC. So it has that letterhead on it. Neither can I. I'm not seeing anybody throwing their hands up like they have it. Mr. Chair, I suggest we take a 5-minute break, give Cammie a chance to make a copy of that and distribute it. It is relevant to this matter pretty central.
Okay, we'll take a 7-minute break by that clock. We'll return at 10 minutes after 11.